Texas lawmakers on both sides of the aisle continue to speak out against the death of George Floyd. And tomorrow, Governor Greg Abbott will hold a news conference in North Texas to discuss the state's response to continued protest violence. Last week, Abbott called Floyd's death horrific and the consequence of poor police work. He also declared a state of disaster over the weekend, which allowed him to designate federal agents to serve as peace officers in Texas. Joining me now to discuss this further is Central Texas Republican Congressman Michael McCaul. Congressman McCaul, welcome back to the program. I know you're a former federal prosecutor. Where do you stand on the circumstances surrounding Floyd's death?
I thought it was extremely unjust, a tragedy that needs to be denounced at all levels. And, as a federal prosecutor, public integrity section, also Deputy Attorney General for Criminal Justice for the state of Texas. So I've been both at the state and federal side of this. This officer had been reprimanded, as I understand it, about 18 times with disciplinary proceedings. There's absolutely no reason why he should have been on the force that tragic day. He deserves to be prosecuted under the full extent of the law. I'm actually, it's good to know that swift justice is occurring. He's charged with murder and is behind bars where he belongs. We all watched the videotape, and it is absolutely inexcusable what happened. And it's unfortunate because I've worked with a lot of great law enforcement officers, and it's somebody like that really puts a bad mark and a stain on law enforcement. And the majority of them are very decent, good people. This one was not.
Congressman, the officer seen kneeling as you're speaking there on Floyd's neck, he's been charged with third-degree murder, second-degree manslaughter. Is that enough?
Under the laws of the state of Minnesota, I think, maybe intentional in terms of first degree. This was when the man is saying that he cannot breathe, and it goes on for 7 to 8 minutes. You have to look at the question of intent here. So, again, I would, my hope is that he'll be behind bars for the rest of his life, and it will not be a very pretty place to be for him.
What about the other officers who were on scene and witnessed it? Should they be charged?
I think authorities are investigating their complicity with this killing, if you will, this murder. Now, those are the charges, but I think we've all seen the footage, and it's safe to say the cause of death came out today. There was asphyxiation because of the pressure applied to the back of his neck. I think all those witnessing this, certainly you could make the argument, I could as a former prosecutor, that they were complicit with these charges. So I know they are investigating that.
What is your reaction to President Trump telling governors today that they have to get much tougher, that they've been weak on protesters? Of course, all of the protests that we saw over the weekend across cities here in Texas even.
My advice would be to show a little empathy to the family of the victim of this killing, personally. I think this is one of those moments where you transcend party lines and you become Americans. I think the nation needs great healing right now, and it needs leadership that offers healing to the nation. I think, personally, I'm going to be working with the local Austin Greater Crime Commission, Chief Manley. How can we tear down these walls of division within our own community? I think community policing is not about police. The police have to work with the community, and that's what community policing is all about. I don't like, however, Karina, the First Amendment is the first because it protects lawful protest. It's as old as the founding fathers, and it's our very sacred right and duty to protest as a nation when wrongs occur. But the First Amendment does not protect acts of violence. It does not protect looting and burglaries and bombings and burnings and desecration, like what took place at the state capitol. But also when I looked at the World War II Memorial and the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., the First Amendment does protect peaceful protests, but not this violence.
You kind of mentioned some policy changes or some changes and the things that you're working on, even with the local officials. What about specific law changes and institutional practices that can happen now that you can work on at the federal or the local level?
Well, community policing really starts at the local level. And I've been in contact with the Austin Police Department, with the Greater Austin Crime Commission, which my wife serves as a board member of. And, Chief Manley has recommended reforms to the system, and he did that even before this happened. And I think we need to look at reforms, how to bring this type of injustice and perhaps prejudice within our law enforcement community, how we can possibly stop that, from happening again. And it all starts again at the local level. None of us in the law enforcement community like something like this. I think it's such a black stain on the whole community that we have to call it out for what it is. It is racist. And we cannot tolerate this within our law enforcement community. 99% are great people, and I have worked with them over my tenure in my career, and I continue to be supportive. But we do have to make reforms to our criminal justice system so that crimes like what happened in Minnesota to George Floyd never happen again.
Congressman Michael McCaul, we'll have to leave it there. We'll speak with you on this again. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you, Karina.